This week's episode of One of a Kind with RVD is presented by Get Blitzed, and you can get 15% off your order when you head to get-blitz.com and use promo code RVD. Get 15% off.
One of a Kind with Rob Van Dam is recorded in front of a live studio audience.
And then maybe I felt like I had tighter cuffs on me than I really did. You know, that might have been how that affected me because, like a lot of people, it would come across to the fans like, dude, they're not letting you be, you know, RVD from ECW.
I used to get frustrated when WWE would PG RVD. Would that kind of frustrate you, or did you just kind of understand the name of the game kind of thing?
Well, I wasn't super comfortable with that era. And then maybe I felt like I had tighter cuffs on me than I really did. You know, that might have been how that affected me because, like a lot of people, it would come across to the fans like, dude, they're not letting you be, you know, RVD from ECW. They're not letting you do any of your shit. But then I would know, like, well, I only have 3.5 minutes for my whole match, and you know, chairs are illegal here, so of course you're not going to get the same RVD because, you know, just everything about ECW was different. But I think it all started with the fact, as far as my approach to the match, my vibe, my rhythm, whatever. I had no thoughts of time in my mind. I thought like, okay, I'm gonna walk around the ring a little bit. Maybe I'll go to lock up, and then maybe I'll just instead roll under the rope and go do some thumbs and high five some fans or whatever, and take my time, you know, and get everyone, and then come back in, be like, okay, now I'm ready. Like with WWE, it just seemed like the whole agenda was about live TV and about getting everything done by that finishing mark. And, you know, we're not diving into the crowd and fighting with chairs and weapons and swearing and bleeding and busting through tables. Now they do. Now I think they do it too much, because whenever I see an announcer table getting broke, I'm like, does that even mean anything anymore?
Right.
You know,
I feel the same way.
Seems like every single, you know, same thing with the dives, same thing with the Stone Cold Stunner, same thing with the Canadian Destroyer.
Super kicks.
It's like every single match had to have all of these elements in it. It seemed like for a long time, but I feel like they're busting out of that now, and it's awesome. It's good to see them busting out of that, because for a while it was hard for me to fathom like what they're doing or why they're doing that, why it's changed in that way. You know, why does everybody want to do moves that other wrestlers got over? I don't know, but I think that we're getting out of it and back a little bit to the way the wrestling was before, and maybe not with every company, but that offers them a good chance to be different if they go different directions.
Right. Definitely different flavors, different strokes for different folks. Jim the Dawn adds, I loved that about ECW, the little pauses in between the big spots to let it breathe. So he was taking note of that for sure.
It was really soaking in the moment, and man, what some great moments too. You know, when the crowd was so fired up, you had to soak that up. And man, I can't imagine having to work around a time limit and having those matches that I had. You know, the matches I had with Jerry Lynn, I'd be like running, diving over the guardrail on him, going to the ref. How much time we got? Okay, we gotta get back in the ring. Boom. You know, it's that made the biggest difference. You know, and the first time I remember being at a WWE show, this was during the run-in, the 1997 invasion. So when I wrestled Jeff Hardy and T Cold Scorpio was Flash Funk and the Headbangers, and JR was with me. During that little run, I saw in the dressing room a page with rules on it.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, I didn't know if this was going to be in there every single day or not, but everything on it was probably for us. That makes sense for the ECW guys.
Oh,
Everything that was on the list was stuff that we do at every match that we can't do. You know, it was like no middle fingers, no swearing, no looking at the camera, no going over the guardrail, no chairs, no tables, no, like it was a huge list of rules, and I just figured that's because this show was so much more controlled. Steve Austin's probably going to use the middle finger in the main event, and they got a big buildup, so it means a lot. So if people are doing it earlier in the card, it doesn't mean as much in the end. And the whole show, if you think about it with WWE, is approached more in a holistic manner like that.
yeah, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Whereas on indie shows, maybe the first match sometimes will go out and go 30 minutes and it'll be a ladder match and do every spot in the book. And you're like, why would they start the show like that? But WWE was kind of the opposite because they kind of looked at the whole show. And so if you were going to do something, you might have to get it approved ahead of time because somebody else might be doing that, before or after you, and that would be an issue.
Do you think that's a good thing to do too? Is kind of like that kind of structure of like, hey, let's go get this approved or see what we can do, so we don't step on one another's toes like throughout the whole card of the thing. Do you think that's
Yeah, it's a good
yeah?
idea. It's a good idea. You know, me and Sabu used to always say, how do we know what we're going to do? We're not out there, you know. I heard Sabu say that once, and then I got that from him. You know, the camera guy from TNA would come up to him. Are you guys going to be flying over the guardrail like any, do you know? Because I want to make sure I get in. He goes, how do I know? I'm not in the ring yet. You know, and we didn't like talking to those guys and stuff, but it is a good for business.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
it's good for for catching the product, which is what you're trying to do. So, yeah, absolutely. And it was never like a free for all in ECW, you know what I mean? But I never would hold somebody back. Like even if I thought it was wrong, I kind of a lot of times would tend to take the personal approach to how I would answer a request. If someone came up to me and said, "Hey, Rob, do you mind if I'm in the second match? Do you mind if I do a splash off the top rope? I know that's your finisher, but do you mind if I do it?" And even if I thought like, motherfucker, like that's you shouldn't do that, I still wouldn't tell him though. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I would instead of looking at it because I wasn't a man, an office guy, you know,
Mm-hmm.
and I didn't take the obligation personally to do everything I could for the betterment of the whole night. You know what I mean? So like if it was like sometimes they would even ask about it, and this is not ECW, this is now like somebody in indie shows. So in the last couple of years, someone asked me, do you care if I do a Van Daminator during the show? Like, you
What?
know, like I mean, maybe it'll come across like a tribute because they know RVD's on in the main event.
Yeah, but that's still
Otherwise,
selfish. It's like,
otherwise, but but still, I'm usually going to be like, "Hey, knock yourself out, bro." You know,
yeah,
you can get over it like I can.
yeah. Ah,
That's usually even if I don't think that they should do it, because then it's like there's office to the boys and there's the boys to the boys. You know what I mean?
mm-hmm.
When it comes to boys to the boys, I don't appreciate it when somebody uses the process of holding others back or down to get ahead. So I'm very cognizant of that.
Yeah, and like a person doing something like that, like if they're like, "Hey, can I do a Van Daminator?" and you're like, "Yeah, go ahead," they're going only just going to think of you. And I think somebody doing something like that, it's kind of selfish on their end because hey, RVD's on the card. Well, look at what I'm doing. Here's RVD's Van Terminator.
I really just mostly like will hope that someone else talks to them, whoever's in
Yeah,
charge of the
yeah,
show, agent, boss, whatever, someone will pull them aside. Not me.
right. Yeah, you'd think some of these talents, read the room talents, RVD's in the room, okay?
Yeah, right. You called it, dude. You called it a Van Daminator. Like it's not even like you. That's my move, bro.
Yeah, right. That didn't come from Jean Claude, okay? Just so you know.
It's not like he said, "Do you care if I do a spinning back kick into a chair into this guy's face?" He told me,
Right.
You don't do that, right, Rob?
Which for a while, like it took me a while to get used to everyone doing it, everyone else's moves because they even go by the name and give credit to the person that they're stealing it from. And that's just so different than the way that I got trained. You know, I mentioned this a lot and did a documentary the other day about getting trained. Something that Sabu and I were both part of about the Sheik that you will find out about soon enough. And man, you know, I was always taught don't try and be like someone else because there's already one of those guys.
Yeah.
And don't try and take someone else's position because he's already got that position. That position's already taken, you know. Be yourself, create your own position. And man, if I would have like not only stolen moves from other wrestlers, but actually called it after them, you know, like Sheik would have stabbed me if I would have said, I want to learn how to do a Stone Cold Stunner, you know, and do a RKO. You know, they'd be like, what? Like, those are the names. It's almost like you're confessing to stealing it by naming them. You're providing the evidence. You know, you're like, yeah, I stole it. Look, there's footage right there. It's just so different from the way I got trained. And you know, like everybody would do a body slam, but when it came to finishes, it used to seem like, okay, yeah, that torture rack that goes to Hercules in WWE, Lex Luger maybe down south.
Yeah.
Boom, that was it. And then it came to the era of everybody wants to show that they can do every move. And then you got 5-foot guys that are 200 pounds or less doing power bombs to big people. I saw Tessa Blanchard power bomb Brian Cage, and I cried. I cried at what the business has become. You know, like talk about doing something that's out of your realm. You know, it's like Moose is so big. He wants to show he can get clothesline and do 360s and do backflips. And it's like, it literally takes from him being big, but it's hard to understand that when you're in that perspective, because you think it shows how athletic and active you are and agile that you are. But at the same time, man, I'm not going to clothesline that guy and make him do a 360 flip. He's like 275 pounds. And dude's huge. Shouldn't be doing that kind of stuff. And anyway, you know, sometime in 2010s, somewhere